Good morning and welcome to the Graduation Options webcast. We have just a few reminders today. The slides will advance automatically throughout the presentation. Should you need technical assistance, click on the help icon. You are encouraged to submit a question at any time during today's presentation by typing in the Ask a Question tab and clicking Submit. In order to stay within our time, we will not be able to answer all questions, but all questions will be reviewed to provide future guidance. If your screen freezes or the slides do not appear to be advancing as they should, please try exiting and restarting the session, as it may be an issue with your connectivity. I will now turn the call over to Jim Wright, Director for the Office of Curriculum and Assessment at the Ohio Department of Education. Please go ahead, Jim.
Thank you, and good morning to everyone. I'm joined today with Emily Pacious, from the Director from the Office of Career Tech and Education, and Christine Gehrig, Assistant Director, Nonpublic Educational Options. They will be helping to respond to any questions as we go through, but I will present today. As we are getting ready for graduation, today we are going to review Ohio Revised Code and the testing requirements for chartered non-public schools and the graduation requirements for their students, including graduation pathways, which include the EndofCourse Test, state EndofCourse Test, the WorkKeys career credential, ACT, SAT, and the alternative assessment pathway. During the presentation, we will also have a couple poll questions that we will ask you to respond to. First of all, taking a look at Ohio Revised Code 3301-0711, this slide refers to those schools that are accredited through the Independent Schools Association of Central Ohio. For students who are enrolled in those chartered schools under scholarship, those students are required to take all assessments or the alternative assessment. And for those students in those schools that are not under a state scholarship, those students are not required to be assessed. For all other schools that are not accredited through the Independent Schools of Central States, they have the following choices, and this is from 3301-0711-L3. And those students that are enrolled in the school, whether on scholarship or not, have the choice. The schools are required to either take all assessments prescribed in Ohio law, which is 1, 2, take only the assessment prescribed by Division B1 of Section 3301-0712 of Ohio law, provided that the student school publishes the results of the assessment for each graduating class, and that is currently the Nationally Standardized Assessment for College and Career Readiness, which is either ACT or SAT, and the third pathway is to take an alternative assessment. At this time, we would like for you to take a look at the question, what do you view as the primary pathway to graduation for your students? Your choices are the state testing option with EndofCourse, which is number 1, remediation free score on the ACT, SAT, the alternative graduation assessment, or the WorkKeys industry credential. And we'll give you a moment or two to respond. Okay, and at this time, as we look, you can see the results of the survey or of the poll question. Okay, turning next to taking a look more at the graduation requirements. What we talked about previously was the requirements for the schools to test. Under 3313 and 612 graduation requirements, it does require that any student receiving a diploma will have either passed and met the graduation requirements, which are found in Ohio Revised Code 3313-618, or the alternative pathway, which is 3313-619. And the options, as we talked about, are at least 18 points on state test, an industry-approved credential, and a work readiness score on WorkKeys. And we're going to talk more about each of these three options as we go through the presentation. And finally, the remediation-free score on the ACT and SAT. Again, we have a couple poll questions that we'd like for you to respond to. First poll question is, which pathways to graduation are you offering to your juniors? And answer options are all the state pathways, ACT, SAT only, the alternative graduation assessment, or some combination of those three above. And again, we'll give you a moment to respond. Okay, and again, you can see the results there on your screen. We next are going to ask the same question, but only for this year's sophomore. So which pathways to graduation are you offering to your sophomore class? All state assessments, ACT, SAT only, the alternative graduation assessments, or a combination of the above? Again, you can see the results of that poll. At this time, we'd like to delve in a little more deeply into the different options. And first of all, we will talk about earn the 18 points on the end of course exams. The courses that have end of course exams attached to them in ELA and English Language Arts are English 1 and English 2. For mathematics, it can be either Algebra 1 or Integrated Math 1. In geometry or integrated math 2. In science, it is biology, and in government or history, it is American history and American government. Those are the 7 end-of-course tests. Students earn graduation points towards that based upon their performance on those tests and the performance level they reach. Second option is around the ACT, SAT. On the screen are the remediation-free scores on the nationally standardized assessment of the major college and career readiness and are used for college admission, which are the ACT and SAT. And the state administration for that is during the spring of the student's junior year. Although students may use scores to meet this based upon other administrations, but the state administration will be during the spring of their junior year. The third pathway, state pathway, is the workforce readiness. Attain a score that demonstrates workforce readiness on the WorkKeys and obtain either an industry recognized credential or a license issued by a state agency or board. For the WorkKeys assessment has 3 sections: reading, applied mathematics, and locating information. Students in the classes of 2018 and 19 must earn a total of 13 points across the 3 WorkKeys sections, and students in the class of 2020 and beyond must earn a total of 14 points. Students must also earn at least 3 points on each section of the test. Next, we'd like to explore the fourth pathway, that is for the alternative pathway for charter non-public schools. This has been described in Ohio Revised Code 3313.619, which requires the state to provide a list of those alternative exams. The alternative pathway for charter non-public students, some facts: the schools are responsible for contracting with the vendor to administer these alternative tests. The schools are responsible for the cost of the alternative assessments. Scores from these tests this year can be combined with points from those earned previously to meet the 18 graduation points needed for graduation, and scores on these tests prior to 2016-17 school year cannot be used as graduation points since we're putting this into place this year. The approved alternatives for this are listed on slide 17. For American government, it's either the Iowa Assessment Forms E and F, levels 15 through 17 and 18 of the social studies, or Terra Nova 3 social studies, level 21-22. For American history, the Iowa Assessments Test Forms E and F, levels 15 through 17, 18 social studies, or Terra Nova 3 social studies, level 19. Algebra 1 is the Iowa Assessments again, or the Terra Nova. You can see the levels. Geometry. So what we have here is a match-to-match that can be, and use for the graduation points. The next slide shows the same information for biology, ELA 1, and ELA 2, English Language Arts 1 and English Language Arts 2. Again, they are the Iowa test and the Terra Nova 3. On the next slide, we have the information of where you can go to on our website to obtain the crosswalk and the link to the scores crosswalk, which will give you the 5 levels, the scores on each of the Iowa tests and each of the Terra Nova tests that correspond to each of the performance levels, advanced, accelerated, proficient, basic, and limited, that can be used to assign or points, graduation points for your students for the 4th pathway. In addition, for the state test, any chartered non-public school may choose to administer the full set of tests in the College Work Ready Assessment System 3301-0712, which includes the state EndofCourse Test, the ACT, SAT, and the WorkKeys Career Credential. The state provides these tests and results to the schools if they choose to participate. Students may retake any of the state tests for which they are eligible during any of the state testing windows during their high school career. So a student can, if the school is using those. We're going to give you some contact information. If you are using the state test, contact information for the Office of Curriculum and Assessment about participation administration. The contact number, general office number, is 614-466-1317. And on the next slide, we have additional contacts for around, if it's your questions around testing, your contact will be Donna Williams. If it's around graduation requirements, it would be Sarah Wilson. And if it's an ACT or SAT question, Michael Reiser. Also want to make you aware that there is a new FAQ for charter non-pubs for graduation that just was posted, I believe, yesterday. So look for our website for additional information there also. For schools using the ACT and SAT pathway, the state, as I stated earlier, the state administration is during the spring of a student's junior year. At this time, if you are participating, you should have already selected whether your school will be administering the ACT or the SAT. The state will pay for the state administration one time for a student during their junior year. The remediation free score may be obtained on a state-administered test or on any previous ACT, SAT score earned by the student. Also, you may use scores from multiple administrations to meet the separate remediation-free scores in English, mathematics, and reading scores. Students must meet the remediation-free score that is in effect at the time of the state testing of their cohort in their junior year. As we conclude our presentation, we have one more poll question for you. The question is, what percent of students are you concerned are not on track to graduation currently in your cohort? And the answers are 0 to 10%, 11 to 25%, 26 to 40%, or over 40%. And we'll give you a moment to respond. Okay, and you can see the results of that poll question. At this time, we'll turn it over, and now's our time to connect with the audience to answer your questions.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Jim, for that presentation. We do have a few questions submitted this morning, which we'll get to those shortly. We want to remind everyone on today's webcast that this is being recorded and will be sent out to you as soon as possible so you can refer back to this and share it with colleagues. Our first question, Jim, can a student retake an alternative assessment, i.e. the Terra Nova, an unlimited number of times?
Pardon?
That would be a local decision, and it would be a school-level decision. You'll want to be able to provide opportunities for your students to retake those tests. The department has released retake guidance for the Ohio State tests, if you would like to see the guidance that's provided there. But essentially, that'll be a local decision and what's needed for your students to be able to meet the graduation requirements.
And I should have added that is Sarah Wilson, who is the person identified as the graduation requirement question. So thanks, Sarah.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Our next question, also regarding alternative assessments. Can 8th graders taking high school courses take the alternative assessments during their 8th grade year?
Again, that would be a local decision as to when they take it. You know, what we would recommend is that a student should be taking the test at the time they are receiving the instruction. So, you know, if they are being accelerated, as the same as with our state test, if the student is taking Algebra 1 as an 8th grader, then they would be taking the 8th grade test, or the Algebra 1 test in the 8th grade. So, yes.
Jim, thank you very much. We want to give the audience a moment to submit their questions, but as a reminder, if you do have questions after this, the contact information is in the PDF of the slides available now in your Documents tab, along with all the contact names and phone numbers that Jim provided earlier. In addition, if you'd like to search for more resources, please search graduation requirements on the Ohio Department of Education webpage for additional PowerPoint resources and a video you can share with your school community. Our next question: what suggestions do you have to document what each student has taken in order to meet the graduation requirements? If I'm inferring in terms of the progress the student has made in terms of heading towards the path of graduation and meeting those necessary requirements.
Okay. You know, our suggestions are that you know, we're looking at if we can provide some resources to help schools track that, but it basically is the same as the tracking that is done to make sure that they've met their curricular requirements. So, you know, it would be, you know, this is just in addition. They have curricular requirements they need to meet. This would also be the state. We're looking at if we can provide some templates and some forms to help with that tracking, but at this stage, that is a local responsibility.
Thank you very much. Our next question: what should a student do if that student is unable to achieve a remediation-free score on the ACT during their junior year?
If that's the pathway they're using, then you know, I would assume they will retake the test. You know, at their expense. They can again and repeat the ACT and the SAT. You know, one of the things we are pointing out is that there are multiple pathways to graduation for the charter non-pubs, 4 pathways. But if the school is only offering the ACT and SAT as one, then that's the one pathway their students will have to meet the graduation requirement.
Thank you very much, Jim. It looks like we do not have any further questions this morning. So before we sign off, I want to make sure that the audience has that last slide on contact information, which is, plus the email for the grad requirements if you have questions about that. Do you have any final comments before we conclude this morning?
No, just like to thank you for taking your time to participating, and if you do have questions, please forward those to the people here that we have identified and let us know how we can help to support you and your students.
Jim, thanks very much for your time this morning. We appreciate everyone's participation. This concludes our webcast.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. You may now disconnect.